So far, we've looked at the use of the long edge in our cutting actions from inside the creek. We've used a thrusting action either as a way to set up a hitter or a way to hit directly. Whether or not we hit with the edge or hit with the point, this type of action we're going to regard as a thrusting action, where we're bringing our sword out to the center and then following our body behind it. Again, if I hit with the long edge and strike over the top of my opponent's head, or if I cut with my point in front of their face and I thrust, both of those mechanics are indistinct, and therefore we're going to regard them purely as thrusting actions. And these are the types of actions that we're going to perform once we're looking to bridge the gap between the onset, the Sufechten, the distance at which we're looking to provoke her to take, versus inside the creek where we're looking to score our hitter. And so we've also looked at the use of the long edge to score the hitter. And the way that we do that is we keep our sword in the center of our body regardless of where it is in the cutting arc. So if I bring my sword up to my left side, my sword is centered in my body. There's a moment where when I have my sword down below me to the point in which I bring it up to begin the cut, that it's not centered on my body. And during those moments, we're not moving, we're not committing our body either forward towards our opponent, and we're also not committing rotation. I'm not beginning to turn before I get my sword in position. That I want to begin my cut and end my cut where the sword stays in the center of my body the entirety of the time. Looking at short edge cuts, they operate a little differently. So the way that we generate force in a long edge cut is we use the rotation of our core to power the action. And a short edge cut is powered in a different way. A short edge cut is powered with the uncrossing and crossing of the hands. In these cases, I'm not looking to perform the cut with my body, but rather I'm looking to perform the cut with the push and pull mechanic of my hands. In order to achieve this, I want to put the sword, the hilt of the sword, in the center of my body. The blade will not be in line with that line. It will not be structurally aligned so that the point and the hilt and the center of my chest make a straight line. Instead, we use the crossing, uncrossing, and crossing of the arms to generate the power, the momentum that we get from doing so. So there are several actions that we're going to look at specifically that utilize this type of power generation. So the first action that we're going to look at is the spherical. If I begin with my sword in this low posture, what you might call Schrank-cut, the barrier guard, or even in certain cases, the fool's guard or the change guard, Alber or Wechseln. So if I begin in this low guard with my arms crossed, and I lift my sword up to my center, and then I uncross my hands. So I take this motion, and I uncross my hands, so that the force of my action travels in a horizontal plane. This is what we call the cross-cut, or the spherical. So I begin with a low posture. I lift my sword to my center, and then I cut horizontally, uncrossing my hands. We call this the spherical. From here, we can spheric again. As we cross our hands, in this case, we turn our hip so that the sword remains in the center of our body. The hilt of the sword remains in the center of our body. Again, the blade of the sword is not aligned with our hilt in these cases. In the case of a long edge cut, the blade of the sword is always directly in line with me and the force of my action. Here, the blade is not in line, the hilt is in line, and the power is generated with the crossing and uncrossing of our hands. I can do with a step. I begin in low guard, I throw my spheric, and then I cross cut. I can step to reorient, but this is a tactical choice. This isn't assisting in the power generation. It may be changing the angle that I'm approaching my opponent. It may be taking me outside of their hips. It may be creating distance. But the role here isn't generating power or generating speed in the action. It's a tactical choice. The power is generated through the crossing motion in this case, and we keep our hips oriented in line with our hilt as the blade travels around our body. Again, we start in a low guard. We uncross. We cross. We uncross. We cross, and this time we step. And this way, we can perform the cross cut. If I begin in a low posture, and instead of performing a cross cut, if my sword is coming from my right, I bring my right hip forward. Instead of doing so, I perform a plunge cut, what we call the shielhow. A plunge cut travels at a 45-degree arc in the direction of the sword. If my sword starts on my left side, my opponent's right, then I lift my sword so that my long edge is pointed towards my left side, and I strike down with my short edge. In this case, I'm moving from a cross position to an uncrossed position. Then I can follow up with a long edge cut once I get it into position. I can perform the same action from my right side. If my sword is on my right side, I go from an uncrossed position into a cross position. I travel down the direction of the short edge. I bring the sword around, and once I get into position, I allow it to pull me forward for my long edge cut. So again, I start in a cross position. I'm plunging from my left side, bring it around, cutting with the long edge. In an uncrossed position, I cross my arms, bring the sword into position, and allow it to pull me forward. The final action that we're going to look at with regards to short edge cuts is combining some of the benefits of the short edge cut, the speed and the generation of power from the push-pull dynamic of the crossing and uncrossing of the arms. We're going to combine that with bringing our body behind our sword as a method to move from the Sufechten into the Krieg. And so I can begin with my sword forward here in this low guard, and I can move into this from a cross position into this uncrossed position. And here I'm long, so I can bring my body forward in behind the sword, what we call the shielhow. And so we treat this very similarly to the other long actions that we looked at earlier in the case of the schießen or the flying thrust. I bring my sword forward and I bring my body in behind it. And so in this way, I use the push-pull dynamic, not as a method to generate power, but as a method to generate speed, so I can get my sword into position in a strong way, and then bring in line with my structure so that I can put the weight of my body behind the cut. This action is similar to other short edge cuts that we looked at, but in this case, it functions the way that a thrust does. It's a very similar mechanic to a thrust where I bring my sword in position and I bring my body behind it. Thanks for watching Historical Fencing Channel content. If you'd like to learn more, check out our Patreon link in the description for detailed, one-on-one, tailored instruction. And don't forget to like and subscribe.